I understand that many West Ham fans have various concerns about the club and the way it's run. But the scenes we witnessed at the London Stadium on the 10th of March were a disgrace, and I condemn the mindless hooliganism of a small minority of people intent on disrupting the game. The safety and security of spectators and staff has to be the #1 priority. A full, detailed investigation is underway. Last week's Emergency Safety Advisory Group meeting sought to understand what happened and to identify improvements. The Safety Advisory Group recognised that the stewarding and security operation was stretched significantly by the unprecedented scale and volume of incidents. Initial investigations show an apparently planned and coordinated campaign of disruption. More than a dozen fights broke out in different parts of the ground between West Ham supporters at the same time. 26 different individuals tried to get onto the pitch, 22 were stopped by stewards, 4 were successful. There were 150 separate incidents, 50 public order offences and 40 assaults. CCTV footage clearly shows a coordinated move by a known group of individuals to the director's box resulted in the scenes we all witnessed. A former Upton Park steward, a middle-aged woman, was knocked to the ground and trampled by mindless thugs, suffering whiplash and concussion. Another ex-serviceman suffered severe bruising, protecting one of the pitch invaders from the blows and kicks of other West Ham fans. 6 of the 56 persons of interest have previously served banding orders at the London Stadium or Upton Park. I understand work is underway to identify, prosecute and ban all those responsible for violence and disorder at the match. I'd like to publicly thank the stewards and security staff for their efforts and restraint under the most intense provocation. With oversight from the Safety Advisory Group, measures will be taken to further improve the security regime so it's better placed to respond should similar incidents occur again. This will include increasing the level of stewarding, enhancing pitch security and a significantly larger police presence at the next match. Under the contracts signed by the previous mayor, these costs fall onto the London taxpayer, despite them being the result of the behaviour of some West Ham supporters. While I've called on the operator to deliver the best possible stewarding at the venue, I've also called on the owners of West Ham to take decisive action to permanently remove those intent on violence from attending matches and to take responsibility for managing the appalling behaviour of a small minority of its followers. In the days after the match, I received letters from Baroness Brady claiming there had been a 15% cut in safety and security expenditure and that the resources available to the venue safety team at the Burnley match were inadequate. Having received reports from senior officials, I'm advised there has been no requirement to reduce stewarding and security spending during the season. This is judged on a match-by-match basis. I am advised, in fact, that the cost of stewarding and security for the Burnley game on the 10th of March was in line with the agreed standard for Category A games and was actually similar to the Chelsea game, a much higher risk fixture. I've called on those that run West Ham to focus on building better relations with their supporters and tackling those intent on violence. The overwhelming majority of West Ham supporters and the London taxpayer deserve much better.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Assembly Member Dismore.
That very comprehensive report about West Ham. Can you tell us how much extra the taxpayer is going to have to find as a result of these additional security measures? Was there any intelligence anticipating trouble beforehand? Because it does seem like we could be drifting back to the old days. And bearing in mind that last year West Ham cost the taxpayer over £1 million net in terms of policing, will you redouble your efforts to try and persuade West Ham to make a contribution and also approach the government to try and get them to agree that football clubs should pay the full cost of policing their matches, bearing in mind that last year it cost London a net £7 million, plus £3 million for BTP, £10 million in total?
Well, can I thank you for your question, and you've been lobbying on this issue for some time now. We have 5 Premier League clubs in London, and the cost of policing those 5 games is huge, particularly in the context of the huge cuts the Met Police has faced over the last 7 years. the agreement reached between the Mayor and West Ham and in the contracts previously signed mean that the cost of the additional security, the cost of additional policing falls on the taxpayer, not on West Ham. I'm due to meet the Vice Chairman of West Ham, Baroness Brady, shortly. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss commercial issues and how we go forward, but clearly one of the issues we'll be raising is security and safety and the additional costs. And clearly one of the issues I'll be raising is what appears to be a disproportionate cost on the taxpayer for West Ham having the privilege of playing at the London Stadium.
Thank you very much. Assembly Member Boff.
Mr. Mayor, Karen Brady, who is the Vice Chairman of West Ham United, wrote to you on the 3rd of January 2017 requesting a meeting. Did you meet Karen Brady as a result of that request?
We're meeting shortly.
Did you meet her as a result of that request on the 3rd of January 2017?
There's a variety of reasons why I meet, and if you'll remember, when the Moore-Stevens report was published, we then decided to pursue a commercial strategy for the stadium, and the best thing was to meet with West Ham, the owners, once we'd made progress on the commercial strategy, and that's why the meeting's been scheduled for next week.
Okay. On the 20th of September, you wrote to Karen Brady and suggested that, and welcomed her suggestion of a meeting, and you asked your office to schedule a conversation later in that year. Did you have that conversation, Mr. Mayor?
Personally, no, but my officials meet regularly with those who run West Ham. The stadium operators meet regularly, E20 meet regularly, and City Hall staff regularly speak with those who run West Ham. Personally, I've not met with the owners, the chairman or the vice chairman of West Ham, but I look forward to making progress next week.
In the time of the previous chair of the LLDCs, at the time we had the previous chair of the LLDC, we quizzed him yesterday at Budget Committee and asked him when he had met you over that period of his 6 months tenure. And he said, apart from an introductory meeting when you first became mayor, you'd never had a meeting with the chair of the LLDC. Is that correct?
I couldn't recall the times I've met him, but I'm happy to go and look at the diary and drop you a note as to how many times I've met him. I couldn't tell you.
Well, according to him, you never did apart from that first introductory meeting. Mr. Mayor, the complaints about stewarding have been around for quite a while, haven't they?
Well, I think the complaints about the stewarding have been around as long as the contract signed by the previous mayor was signed with the owners. And I think the key thing is to realise that these are the consequences of contracts signed between West Ham United and those that run the stadium, but also contracts between those that run the stadium and the stadium operators as well. And what we're trying to do, post Moore-Stevens, is to come up with a commercial strategy that doesn't mean that the taxpayer is facing a massive bill over the next 99 years, but we can reach a resolution that works for West Ham, works for the taxpayer, but also works for those those of us who want to see that stadium as a hub for global events other than just Premier League football.
So, in your words, I don't want to use your words too much, but you reckon that the previous deal failed. How long have you been, or was inadequate? How long have you been aware that that previous deal was inadequate? Well,
you'll be aware there's litigation. There's two separate forms of, inverted commas, litigation. There's the court case brought by West Ham in relation to seating, and separately there's what I would characterise as alternative dispute resolution taking place as well. So there have been issues for a while now.
Quite a while?
Quite a while.
And have you been concerned about those issues for quite a while?
Of course we're concerned in relation to the cost of the taxpayer. We're concerned in relation to litigation taking place. We're concerned when there needs to be recourse to dispute resolution. What we'd like to do is to resolve things amicably, but clearly if you've got one party saying the contract is legally binding and airtight and think they've got a great deal and don't think they should pay any more. It's very difficult. We're trying to make sure we can have a resolution that works for West Ham. It's really important they are happy where they are, that works for the taxpayer, but also works for those of us who want to see the stadium used for events other than Premier League football.
So that's a lot of concern. When did you last meet the chair of the LLDC to discuss those concerns?
Well, my team meet with them regularly. As recently as yesterday, I understand the Chief of Staff was at a meeting with E20. We have regular conversations with them in relation to...
Thank you. I'm sure there are communications taking place between some of your team. When did you meet with them?
Again, I can send you a note from my diary when I last met with them. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Have you met them 10 times?
Why don't I drop you a note to be precise rather than guessing, as is your favourite way of doing stuff? Let me give you a precise answer.
Less than 10 times?
I couldn't tell you.
You couldn't tell me. Is it more than one time?
The chair or the chief executive?
The chair of the LLDC.
I couldn't tell you.
You don't know whether or not you've met them?
No.
You don't know whether or not you've met the chair of the LLDC, which is a major deliverer of regeneration in the East End?
I'm very happy to write you and copy the Assembly in exact number of times I've met with the relevant people you have asked about.
Mr. Mayor, as you are so concerned, why would it be that you haven't responded to repeated requests by West Ham to meet with you to address the issue of the poor relationship between that company and E20, the LLDC? Why haven't you taken personal control until we have a riot?
Well, there's got to be a purpose for the meeting, and the purpose for the meeting is to discuss the commercial strategy for the stadium going forward and what we can do to increase the revenue of the stadium, to address the concerns that West Ham have, but also to address some of the issues that have been raised in the past. That's one of the reasons why we've asked for a commercial strategy to be written up. That includes things like use of the stadium when it's not used for football. That includes things like reconfiguring the seating arrangements. That includes things like ensuring we can get payment for sponsorship around the football matches.
That's good, Mr. Mayor, but it's
and
taken a year and a half, virtually a year and 3 months.
Chair, the question was asked and I've interrupted during my answer, and so, you know.
That's the answer.
So Chair, am I being invited to finish my answer? I'm confused here.
I thought...
The subject matter
Well, I was interrupted, so...
is fascinating. When did you're meeting West Ham soon. When was that meeting organised, Mr. Mayor? When did you arrange that? Was it before the riot or after the riot?
I couldn't tell you when it was arranged, but I answered at previous Mayor's question time that our offices were in contact, and I think the Assembly Member Boff, when answering a question to me, I think 5 questions ago, mentioned the fact that my offices had been in contact with them to organise the meeting. I can't tell you who spoke to who and when to organise the meeting. What I can tell you is that I'm due to meet with the Vice Chairman shortly. I'm here to speak on behalf of Londoners and try and get a good deal for Londoners with West Ham, not speaking on behalf of the Vice Chairman.
Yes. So I'm only happy for you to speak to Londoners, but you've been particularly silent with regard to requests to meet the major tenant of the London Stadium. Why haven't you met them?
Well, Chairman, as I was answering, I did get to finish the end of my answer. So after the Morse Demons report, we asked for a commercial strategy to be undertaken. That's not been completed yet, and so no point in meeting just for a cup of tea and biscuits and a photograph. The idea is to have a purpose for the meeting. Once the commercial strategy was advanced, we're in a position to speak to the Vice Chairman and others behind West Ham. Separately, there is a court case taking place and other threats being made by West Ham. And in addition, there is alternative dispute resolution. But it's important to have meetings for a purpose, and hopefully there'll be a purpose behind the meeting next week.
You, Mr. Mayor, may think it's about having a cup of tea and biscuits. For those people who were fearing for their lives during the riot, it's a much more important subject. And they, Mr. Mayor, are looking for your personal attention and have been for some time. Thank you.
Well, Chair, that question was my response. I think the Assembly Member was trying to seek, and I'll advise him how to ask questions, but he was asking my response And I think it's disgraceful that this Assembly member trying to make political points about a very serious issue about the safety and stewarding of a Premier League game, where we've heard from my opening statement, members of staff were injured as a consequence of the behaviour of a small number of fans. And only this Assembly member will seek to hold me responsible for the behaviour of those hooligans. I am meeting the Vice Chairman next week. One of the things I'll be raising with her and those who own West Ham is how they'll take action to make sure this small minority aren't risking the safety of other users of that stadium.
Assembly Member Prince.
Mr Mayor, you said that there was a need to have a reason for the meeting. That's why you've taken as long as you have to have this meeting with Karen Brady. But earlier you said that there was a desperate need, and has been a desperate need, for West Ham to improve its relations with the LLDC. Did you not think it would be appropriate for you to have a meeting with West Ham to try and improve those relations and understand what the issues were around why there's such a bad relationship?
There's regular contact between City Hall and West Ham, between LLDC and West Ham. Those communications continue. There are regular meetings, for example, as I referred to and asked a question from Assembly Dismore, with the Safety Advisory Group. Additionally, there are court cases and lawyers involved as well. And that's all part and parcel of the relationships that I had with West Ham.
Why do you think there has been, or West Ham have had the need to go to litigation? Why do you think there's that need?
Well, the short answer to your question is West Ham asked for the seating capacity to be increased from the previous agreement of 53,000 upwards. E20 agreed on condition of payment to increase those seating from 53,000 upwards to, roughly speaking, 56,000. West Ham didn't pay the payment that was agreed with E20 in E20's mind, nor shared the proceeds of the benefit in the increase. West Ham will increase the capacity even further, from roughly speaking 56,000 to I think 66,000, and are expecting E20 to do it for free and bear the cost. That means the taxpayer bearing the cost, by the way, not sharing in the proceeds of the increased capacity. I've summarised in shorthand what was behind the latest court case. I may have got some of the details wrong. So that's the dispute, and unfortunately not being able to resolve that amicably. And so my understanding is West Ham are pursuing matters through litigation in the courts.
But yet at no time you thought, as the Mayor of London, that you could step in and help the process, and that you could meet with senior people at West Ham United in order to help resolve some of these issues. At no time you felt that was appropriate.
It's not for me to describe the previous relationships the Mayor had with the Vice Chair of West Ham or with West Ham United. On all operations, whether it's the Garden Bridge, whether it's other projects to do with City Hall, it's really important we act properly.
We're not talking about
and
how
so
good Boris
what's
is.
happened
What we're asking
is that E20
is why,
and LLDC
since January
have been speaking
2017,
regularly
Mr.
to
Mayor,
West
you
Ham.
haven't
What I'm
felt
not
it
in
necessary
favour
to meet.
of is its democracy, particularly when it's taxpayers' money involved. And that's why it's really important that we carry on talking to West Ham as LLDC and E20 are.
Yeah, so
and I'm meeting the Vice Chairman next week.
That you
The
haven't
meeting's
deemed
gonna
it
have a purpose.
necessary to meet with anyone from West Ham.
Sorry to hear the question.
So important that you haven't deemed it necessary to meet with anybody. If
Sorry
it's
to hear
so
that.
important,
Yeah.
why haven't you deemed it necessary to meet with anybody?
As I've explained, LLDC, and E20 meet regularly and talk regularly with West Ham.
But
There
you're
is
the man
separately,
in charge, aren't you, Mr. Mayor?
our lawyers talk regularly as well, and there is
So in
separately
your judgment, Mr.
an
Mayor, you've
alternative
not
dispute
deemed it
resolution
necessary
taking
to meet
place as
until
well.
now. Thank
Sorry?
you. That's fine.